Good afternoon. This is Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. Our next briefing is dedicated to agriculture in Odesa region, and we're having with us Alla Stoyanova, Director of the Department of Agrarian Policy, Food and Land Relations of the Odesa Regional Military Administration. We are going to discuss irrigation as the way to victory and the results of the II Land Reclamation Forum and scenarios for the development of the agro-industrial complex of Odesa region. So, please, the floor is yours. Why irrigation is the way to victory? Because irrigation is the only way to deal with drought. So first, there were certain misruns to the irrigation reform, but now we're at the stage of its implementation, and we already have the practical results of this reform. And the summary of them were discussed in the framework of the II Land Reclamation Forum that took place in Ismail. This is the southern city of Odesa Oblast. And here we have the most severe drought. We managed to do but despite the fact that a lot of people did not believe in us. But we can now see that through irrigation we can restore agrarian sector, and according to the information from the climate experts, in the next 20, 30 years, Odesa will be more deserted. And due to climate changes, 2/3 of the territory of Ukraine will be in the zone of risky agriculture. And out of 2.2 million of hectares that were considered irrigated in 2022, only 525,000 hectares were irrigated, 305,000 hectares in 2022, and in 2023 we are facing the consequences of the Kakhovka crisis. At the same time, the system and infrastructure that was built in the 1960s, 1980s is outdated and energy consuming. Reclamation systems have outlived their useful life, and wear is more than 85%, and they need urgent modernization and restoration, including restoration from the consequences of war. The reform is the precondition for real fight with the disorder of the territories. Moreover, the destruction of the Kakhovka HPP has catastrophic consequences both for Ukraine and the entire world. The terrorist attack on Kakhovka HPP actually left 94% of irrigation systems in Kherson Oblast, 74%, in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, and 30%, and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast without a source of water. The destruction of the Kakhovka HPP will lead to the fact that the fields in the south of Ukraine may turn into deserts in the nearest future. It should be noted that in 2019, the irrigation and drainage strategy in Ukraine for the period until 2030 was approved by government order number 688R. The strategy is based in particular on the principles of separating the functions of water resources management from the function of managing the infrastructure of water management system. These activities were coordinated by the State Water Agency, and now it is coordinated by the Ministry of Agrarian Policy through the Amelioration and Fish Industry Development Agency. There is the law of Ukraine, dated 17 February 2022, on water use organizations and stimulation of hydrotechnical land reclamation. This law introduces an effective model of management of reclamation systems through water use organizations. Odesa region is a leader here. 11 associations of water users have been established, including 6 that have been already registered, and generally there are 24 unions of water users in Ukraine that have been registered. I would also like to say that international donors are also very active with their support within the reform, and they are willing to make efforts to modernize the irrigation system in Ukraine. In particular, the USAID Agro program provides 2 grants to water user organizations in the amount of 36 million for the renewal of reclamation systems, and organizations of the Water is Alive received grant amounting to 18 million hryvnias. Following, and there are certain conditions, they should cooperate with agrarians from Suvorovsky district. Agrarians should invest 8 million hryvnias into this. The law of Ukraine, organizations of water users and stimulation of hydrotechnical land reclamation, also amended Article 16 of the Water Code of Ukraine about exclusion from the list of powers of the state water agency functions related to the implementation of state policy in the field of land reclamation. And the state, the reclamation development agencies are all responsible for that. At the same time, by resolution number 539 of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, some issues of distribution of separate powers of central executive bodies in the field of land reclamation, the power of hydrotechnical land reclamation was excluded from the regulations on the state water agency and transferred to the state fishery agencies. And one more stage of reform in technical reclamation has been concluded pursuant to the mentioned strategy. In accordance with the order of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine dated the 12th of August 2022 on the transfer of integral property complexes of state-owned enterprises, the State Fisheries Agency accepted 39 out of 44 integral property complexes. We don't have these problems in our oblast, but in other regions there are certain challenges. This is the continuation of activities of the organizations, and as for and in practice, we can see that there are certain problems for the state military administration to receive documents for reclamation systems. And there are also problems with the ownership of reclamation systems to provide services to water users. So for the United Water users, to have free operation, they need to get access to reclamation network. So the state agency should give everything to the state reclamation agency. In the public sector, there is a range of challenges. This is the lack of possibility to involve public funds and investments. That's why the reform offers to provide these to United Water users, because agrarians are interested in the development of reclamation system. And our position is the following. Agrarians are also potential investors. And to finalize the reform of this sector, we need to take joint efforts with the agrarians, local authorities, the regional level, the state budget, international donors, because, of course, significant funds are needed here. And 12 projects have been developed by our state administration for the development of irrigation system to the amount more than $1.5 billion, as following the calculations of 2023. And regions will not be able to deal with such investments on their own. So we need to involve international donors, agrarian sector, and communities for this reform to be implemented to 100%. This is our future. I personally have had study visits to Turkey, Israel, other countries. And the best example here is Israel. This country is on sand. They don't have fresh water, but they have salt sea, and they have several factories to desalinate the sea water for irrigation. Israel now is the leader for vegetable production. In Ukraine, we have a lot of black soils, which are etalon for the whole world. We have sun, fresh water. In Odesa, we have a lot of freshwater lakes. We have two freshwater rivers, Dniester and Danube. And we also have salt water. So we have everything for further development, and this is what we do. And now we're sure that the restoration, construction, and modernization of irrigation systems is the only way for our victory over drought. Thank you. Do we have any questions from our journalists? There are no questions. If you allow, I would like to use this opportunity to ask a question. I think that last week the regional administration reported that they harvested more than 1 million. Could you share details about the harvest this year, and what should we do with it after the grain initiative is over? This year, we have better results comparing to other years. We could speak about adjustments of the agrarian sector to all negative consequences of the war. And this is also the understanding of the supply chains. And even under such difficult conditions, agrarians have already started early grain crops and legumes, and in 2-3 weeks we will finalize the harvesting campaign for early crops. We have already harvested 1.5 million, and we also plan to reach 4 million tons of grain despite the situation. What should be done with this grain? We should continue our work as it was last year. And we have the warehouses now. The capacity is 7.5 million tons. For grain as for elevators, we have more than 2 million tons of grains from the previous year. Ukraine is an agrarian country, and Odesa region is still the only safe gates for the whole of Ukraine, despite the fact that we cannot use the Black Sea. But we are developing new export routes. We have the Danube ports, and also there are some losses because of the shelling and missile strikes, but they continue their operations. Of course, we cannot compare the Danube Canal that can export 2.5 million with the big ports in Odessa, Chernomorsk that could export up to 10 million tons of grain per month. But the states takes efforts to use the big water. There 20 billion hryvnias have been envisaged in the budget for the vessels that are willing to continue their operations there. So we are not going to wait. Everyone, we continue our work, and the leadership of the country has been introducing several measures for that. And one more question, the question about watermelons. Of course, we understand that the situation in Kherson Oblast is difficult. The whole country was expecting watermelons from Odessa. Have you increased the harvested territories. And what should we expect this year? Yes, of course, 3 years ago, Odesa had around 200 hectares for cultivating watermelon. But after Kakhovka crisis and also with due regard of the demand for watermelons, agrarians adjust to the situations. And agrarian sector is a very responsible sector that is still here in Ukraine. Agrarians have not left the country because they're connected with their land, and they understand that they need to cultivate every hectare and to harvest crops which are needed today, not only for Odesa region, but for other regions like Mykolaiv, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia regions, and the whole of Ukraine. And in all households, private households and legal entities, they have increased the cultivating acreages for watermelons, for example, like to 3.2 hectares. As for watermelon, it's 2.5 hectares. And today, the whole of Ukraine have been observing the cultivation of Odesa watermelons, and we believe that it will be as tasty as watermelons from Kherson Oblast. Thank you. Thank you very much for the information provided. Thank you very much for the briefing. And we are waiting for you here about the updates about the agriculture in Odesa and Odesa region. That was the last briefing for today. Please follow our announcements for Wednesday and Thursday and stay tuned.